everyone, so this is Ditko, and I'm going to be doing a tutorial series on Blender for beginners. This is a series that I've taught to probably over 1,000 people in the last few years on SL, and it turns out to be just a really great path into learning how to model inside of Blender. And not only model inside of Blender, but model in the ways that fit for SL use. I make a lot of this really about low geometry and game friendly and efficient. So hopefully take this step by step with me. We're going to take our time through it, but you'll see that after just a few short lessons here, you're going to be modeling inside of Second Life. And maybe a lesson or two more and a little bit of practice, you're going to find out that there really isn't anything that you can't create for your second world. And so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that I want to do today is go over the interface with you, what you're seeing. It just makes the rest of everything easier if you know what you're looking at and you know how to do a few simple things. One of the things that you really need to do whenever you open any program, even when you've opened up Second Life for one of the first times, is going into the preferences and looking at them. I've got a few preferences here that I would like for you to set. So in the upper left corner, we're going to do that before we do anything else. Click on File and User Preferences. And while I'm pulling up my little window here, don't worry about my Blender being black. I'm actually going to cover that in just a second here. So in the first tab, which is called the Interface tab, we want to come down to where it says Zoom to Mouse Position and make sure that that is on. We also want to make sure that Rotate Around Selection is on. The third thing in this list is Auto Perspective. I want to make sure that that is turned off. And we will cover what all of these different settings are as the time comes around to know what they're for or to use them. The next tab is called the Editing tab. And in the Editing tab we have Undo, Global Undo. That should be turned on by default. Please leave it on. But if you'll notice, my steps are 254, where yours are probably 32. And actually I can take that up to 256. So how do you change this number? Easily. There's 3 ways actually. The first is to simply click on the number. You'll see that it now becomes changeable and you can type in whatever you want. Again, 256 is the limit. Hitting enter will confirm it and bring you back to the slider window button bar looking like it does now. There's also an arrow on each side of this little window button and you can click that to adjust the number. You can also left click inside of the area here of the button, and while holding your left mouse button down you can scrub through the numbers. So as you can see, I've scrubbed up to 256 down to 0 and back up again simply by holding my mouse down. This process for changing numbers works in all of them that have numbers that you can change. The third button is the Input tab, or the third tab is the Input. If you're going to be doing Blender, and this is something you really want to do, please invest in a 3-button mouse. The third button preferably should be a middle mouse button with a scroll wheel on it. They're really important for the tools that we use and the selections that we make. Some things don't work without a 3rd-button mouse. In that case, if you don't have one, you will want to come in here and check Emulate 3-button mouse. So from now on, if this is what you have checked on, if I say to you middle mouse button this or middle mouse button that, you will hold your Alt key and use your left mouse button. It's one of the best solutions that Blender's come up with, and there are only a few times when you would actually be using your left mouse button at the same time as your middle mouse button. In the cases, or those cases, then this won't work. But that's very rare, and there are alternates to those processes at that time. I'll actually cover one of them as we go through the course here. The second thing that's ultimately important is emulate number pad. And this is only if you do not have a keyboard with a number pad on it. The number pad is the one that looks like the calculator, usually on the right side of the keyboard. If you don't have that, you will need one. So go ahead and click on emulate number pad. This then has the numbers that go above your alpha keys turned into number pad functions. You are a little limited with those choices, but then again, we can work our way around if we run into some kind of issue. And I will cover one of those as well when we get to it. The final thing in this window here, or this tab, is turning off continuous grab. You do not want this on because it gets to be a little confusing, and I will also give an example of that as well. When I give that example, if you want to decide to turn this on, you can always come back and do that easily. The fourth tab, we're not going to do anything on it today, but this is the add-ons tab. And this is where we have all kinds of awesome things that we can use with Blender, outside things that we can bring in and use, or there are also a bunch of internal add-ons that aren't activated right at the beginning. So this is where you can turn them on and activate them and add them. The last tab that we're going to go into today is the Themes tab. Again, everybody always wants to know how I got my Blender black. And usually my background here is a solid black as well. I come into the Themes tab, go to the Presets section, and with the Presets drop down, you can choose from a variety of different themes. You can click through these to see what the theme colors of your Blender turn into. Find one that you're comfortable looking at, because trust me, once you start in Blender, you don't want to stop. It's very addictive, and your eyes need to be comfortable. So after you get done setting all of these, in the lower left area, click on Save User Settings. After you've saved your settings and hit the red X to close the Preferences window, these settings will remain active every time you open up Blender from now on. And that's great. That's exactly what we want. So the first part of the video is done. Yay, let's go on to the second. What we need to know about the interface of Blender is that it is composed of windows. We are looking at right now nothing but a very well thought out layout of windows. This layout is made for mesh modeling. Now we have things like video editing, animations, compositing. There's all kinds of things that you can do inside of Blender. And depending on what you want to do, you can set up or call up a layout that has an arrangement of windows best to fit that project that you're doing. So I'll show you that button now. Up here where it says default, that is the name of the layout. This is our default layout. These windows are arranged for us by default. If we click the little icon, the layout image icon here, you'll see that we have a number of layouts that we can choose from. So for example, here's animation. All of these windows have to do with animating and the tools and the settings and things that you'll need to animate efficiently, or that you just need basics to do anything basic in. We also have one for, let's say, video editing. Looks much different than the default. That's because you have different editor windows that you want to be able to use for editing. So I'm going to go back to the default, and let's go over what windows we have for our default. Now I want you to know that these windows are not permanent. You can eliminate them, you can add them, you can rearrange them. These are just the ones that Blender thought we'd need by default again. So what windows do we have? Well, first thing we should answer is we actually have 5 windows here. They're not easy to see unless you're familiar with Blender, but let me go ahead and point all of them out to you. The first window runs here along the top of Blender, from one end to the other, and this is called the information window. In that window you will find just about everything that you need to start or end a project, to save one, to render one, to import into one, to export from your project. So that's what this window is for. We have things up here that give us information about the version of Blender that we're using. Some of the geometry stats of what we've got going on in our other window down here. We also have a progress bar that you can't see right now, but we'll see one later on that just pops up here briefly to give you a little bit of information, whether it's for an error, whether it's for results, whether something can't be done. So you have a little window that temporarily, like I said, pops up here. We also have a rendering engine choice here. By default, we're in the Blender Render. We can click on this and we can go to, let's say, Cycles Render. Cycles Render has just become very friendly for Second Life users to use. It's an amazing way to get textures and materials created for your objects. Okay, so how do we know that this is a window? Why do I call it a window? First of all, windows can be changed. So I can change this window up here into a window just like this one down here. This is called the 3D viewport. So how do I change this? Well, every window has this little icon. It's either in the upper left or lower left corner of each window. This icon is an eye. And if I click on this, you'll see I get a drop-down menu. And the drop-down menu consists of all the different types of editor windows I can choose from. This editor window type right now, as you can see with the icon, is the info window. So every single window has this editor type button with an icon of its current type of editor that it is in the left upper or lower side. This one, there's really no upper or lower, so it's just at the end here. Alright, so that's that one. The next window that we have is called the 3D viewport, and that is this main window here. And this main window is where we create our scenes, where we model, where we preview, where we work on, and all of the things that we want to do inside of Blender. You have to have a visual in order to make gaming pieces, or gaming environments, or gaming images. And this is where we can do all of that. This 3D viewport has 2 very incredible panels within it. These panels are easily called up by hitting the shortcut keys for them. So the shortcut key in this window for the tool shelf is T. So if I hit T, you see that over here on the left hand side, my panel disappeared. If I hit T again, it reappears. This is called the tool shelf. And this tool shelf holds all the tools that help you get, or that allow you to work with your object. Whatever you have selected in your scene, these here will directly relate to you interacting with them. What this tool shelf also has is a second window called the Operators panel. And if you let me pull this down a little bit, you'll notice, let me get this as a scroll bar. This is a separate, almost window inside of a panel. And this is called the Operators panel. And this changes constantly. Every single time you use a tool, or you move something, or resize it, or cut it in half, or anything at all, no matter what you do to whatever you are working on, you will get specific settings for that tool in this window here. You can see it's a separate window inside of the panel here because each one does have its own scroll bar. You can make this one go bigger or smaller. You can even make it disappear by pulling it with it all the way down to the bottom, and it's gone. But it's not really gone. If you see that little plus sign down there, you can actually click on that and bring back the Operators panel. So these are the tools that you have, and this is the settings for each tool that you use. And again, all of these relate to whatever you have selected. The other panel that we have is called the Properties panel, and I emphasize panel. If you hit the N key, so people will often call this the N panel as well, named after its toggle shortcut key. Toggle again means that if you click it again, the N, it will close. N opens, N closes. It's a toggle once again. Now all of the settings in this panel relate to not the object, but how the object is interacting with the scene itself, or this has settings about the scene. So bringing in background images would be the scene, and those settings would be in here. Grease pencil is to be able to write in the scene. It's not about your object, it's about the scene. And so that's in this window. You have a location. The location is within the scene as well. So all of these have to do with your object interacting with the background, and the background or this area itself, okay? Now, the other part of a window that we have, you may have noticed them, let me close these up, is these three little diagonal bars in the upper right corner and down in the lower left corner. Every single window has these three diagonal lines in both corners of the window. You'll even notice in the information window we had them here, and we have them over here. These tell us that this is a window. They tell us where the window starts and stops, how long it is and how wide it is and how tall it is. These are also great tools to help you create new windows, and we're going to cover that in just a moment. Let me go down here for just a second. Also, do you see here the cube icon? This is the editor type button for the 3D viewport. And again, you can change this viewport into any of these other editor types that you want to. Alright? The icon for this one down here is a clock, and the clock is for the timeline. The timeline helps you to record and interact and play back and use some of the settings for your animations. As beginners, we're not going to be animating, and also if we want to animate at some point, we can call up this window anytime we want, which means we can create one of them. Right now what it's doing is it is taking up space within our Blender interface that we could be using for something else. Instead of having a viewport that is only this size to create in, we could use this space as well for it. So we're going to get rid of this window. We can't just click an X somewhere and have it gone. Blender needs to know, what do you want to put here instead of the timeline? And we do that by basically merging two windows together. We join them together. You have to remember one rule about joining windows. They must be exactly the same size along the edge where they meet, and they must meet. So to close up one of these windows, you notice that they are exactly the same length. They run end to end together. So it's very possible to close up this timeline using the 3D viewport. Where this doesn't work is maybe closing the information window with the 3D viewport. And that's because, again, the info window goes from one end all the way to the other end of Blender, but the viewport doesn't. So we cannot close up either one of these windows, leaving it combined with the other. So if we hover over this edge here, the edge between this window and this window, you'll see we get this double-sided arrow. If we right mouse click, we get a join area choice, and that's what we want to do. So we're going to click on that. Now it's very hard to see in this window, but you first see that I've got still my double arrow icon. If I come up into this window, you see this arrow image. If I were to click in this window now, the timeline would overtake the 3D viewport. And although you can't see the arrow when I hover down here, if I click now, that means the 3D viewport will overtake this window. So basically, whichever of the two windows you want to get rid of, you simply left mouse click in it. So there I go. Left mouse clicking, and now I've got a much bigger 3D viewport in which to work around in. And that's really important when you're working in scenes. You want to have room to move around. Now I said that at any point you can bring up a timeline if you needed to. So let me show you how that's done. Those three little lines are called page grabbers. And if I pull one down or to the side, depending on which one I have, I will create a duplicate window of the one that I'm grabbing within. So since I'm grabbing one within the 3D viewport and pulling on it with my left mouse button, I'm getting a duplicate of that window. Again, if I click on it and pull, I'm getting a duplicate of that window. And a lot of people will make duplicates on accident because it's really easy to accidentally click and pull in these areas. And now I want to close these, so I'm going to right mouse click, join area, click the one I want to get rid of. Right mouse click, join area, click the one I want to get rid of. Now we have two more windows to look at. The first one that we have is called the outliner, and you'll see it's got its own button here to change what type of editor it is again, and it tells you that it's called the outliner. The outliner is a lot like a book, and actually you see how you can make all of these windows different sizes by simply dragging on their edges. It's very handy. But here is the outliner, and scene is kind of like our scene. That's our book. And in that book, or in that scene, we have chapters or objects. So here you can see we've got a camera, we've got a cube, we've got a sun. This is a lamp. And you'll also notice when I click on them that they become highlighted in the viewport. These little plus buttons will show you icons and tell you what it is that's been done to that particular item. Nothing special has been done to any of these items, so nothing shows up here yet. this. Don't worry about that. Alright, we won't use this a lot, but when it comes to a complex scene, this outliner is very important, and there's so much that you can do. You can even click on the little eye here to temporarily hide things. Click on the eye again, and you can bring them back so that you can see them. What we have underneath there is called the Properties window. This is not to be confused with the Properties panel. This itself is a window, and it also has its icon, and it has the editor type so you can change this as well. Now this window is the mother of all windows. We can get so detailed and do some incredible things with our builds by using the functions in this window. This window has many tabs to work in. You have physics, you have textures, you have materials, you have how things interact with the world, and rendering and exporting, all kinds of crazy stuff. This is a great window, and we're going to step into this as we need to. Do not try to overwhelm yourself by just jumping in here and wanting to use it all right away. You learn this step by step as you go through Blender. We will explore some of the things in this window as we go through this course as well. Okay, so this is our Blender interface. These are the windows, and these are what each one of the ones does by default. And so I'm going to go ahead and we will have another tutorial on manipulating through the scene and working with our objects in the next video. So I hope to see you there, and practice opening and closing windows if you want to. Make sure that you have all of your preferences set, like I did at the beginning of the video, in case you didn't do them while I was doing them. Go back and do them now. Please subscribe, share, and like the video and the channel. If people don't watch, then there's not many reasons to make these videos. So let me know that you guys want more by subscribing and sharing. So thank you very much, and we'll catch you at the next one.